Today we're going to look at the role of light in photography. If we were painters, our medium might be oils or acrylics, watercolors or pastels, but as photographers, the medium we're working in is light. And because of that, the more we understand how it works, how it affects our image, and mostly how to capture it well, can really make a difference in the quality of our work. I'm going to be quoting from a book by Ellen and Josh Annan called See It. This is an excellent book for a photographer to own. I own it, and I think it's still available from Amazon, but probably as an ebook. It's really well having. So as we all know, we take a lot of time trying to be at the right place at the right time because the light does make a big difference in our images. First, let's look at the two types of light. There is what we call illuminance, which is a measurement of the source of light. So in the case of our daily lives, the sun puts out about 1 million times as much light as a full moon on a clear night. But the amazing thing is that our eyes are capable of viewing both. The ability of us to view differences in brightness is not surpassed by any mechanical device. So when you use a camera, you have to learn how to judge and make the best use of the sensor of your camera. So what we're dealing with is luminance, and that's a measurement of reflected light. That's the light which bounces off the subject and comes to the sensor of our camera. And of course, we have the aid of looking at our histogram to see how well we did in setting the camera to capture light. If you look at the illustrations below, the best recording is the one at the right, where the photographer adjusted the exposure to bring the brighter part of the image over toward the right end of the histogram, which is where the greatest power is available for recording that information. If you let the camera make the judgment, you're going to come out with something closer to what you see at the left, which is sort of giving average importance to the darks and lights. But in digital photography, the lights are the ones that are critical, that we get them exposed well and not overexposed. Here's two examples of images that require enormous care in recording. The low-key image on the left, if you'll notice the histogram, there's a tiny line of pixels that goes all the way to the right, very minor part of the image, and that's the recording of the moon. And then what happens is that everything else in that dark sky falls to the left. And by being careful in exposure, the photographer hasn't allowed the dark night to become totally black. You can still see detail, at the same time giving you the full detail in the full moon. Have to be skilled and practiced to do that. The right, similarly, there's a picture that is a high-key image, which could only be recorded with very even lighting. It looks to me like this might have been recorded in a snowstorm, where everything is pretty even, and the camera was set to capture the full detail of the brights without overexposing them. And I'm going to show you a few images now where the luminosity really contributes to that visual intensity. That's what we sometimes call impact. The left sunset picture of Cheryl Balzac's, she made a very great effort to keep the detail in the sparkling water and all of the levels of clouds, and she did that by limiting how much of her image she allowed the sun to be recorded in. On the right, Ernie Yu, again, watched his exposure so that he has the beautiful reflections of that sky. Those images weren't taken casually in any automatic way. Care was taken to record them. This is an example from Charlie Bartolotta of a high-key image, and he had to control the light on that subject so that he got even lighting and that nothing was overexposed, and it results in this beautiful high-key image. And these, again, the exposure was critical. On the left, the dew on the spider web, I worked and took many shots of that in order to get the exposure that illuminated the dots of water on the spider web and didn't overexpose any part of it. And similarly at the right, Sherry St. Pierre, in recording that cloud forest in Costa Rica, was at the very last bit of sun before it went down below the horizon, and it took very careful exposure to keep those little tips of clouds reflecting sunlight. I like this example because Chris Kistner, who used to be in the camera club, gave these pictures as an example of the work she did to get her right image at the right. Well, I can tell you that if we had every image taken in preparation for the final one, it wouldn't fit on the screen. We all know you don't normally get everything right the first time. So you check it, you look at the exposure and the composition, take it over till you get what you want. And of course, post-processing can certainly enhance the luminosity, as you can see in this image of Ernie Yu. This is a wonderful example of careful exposure done by Bill Schwartz. Those corpuscular rays are so delicate, and if your exposure is just a bit too bright, they disappear. You have to be very precise, and he's gotten this exciting image because he took the time to get it. And finally, I have an example of Frank Lloyd Wright Boathouse in the Niagara River, taken by Ann Leahy. And if you come any middle of the day time, you'll see a hunk of concrete, and very hard to have it have much impact. But she came at the right time with the sunset on that building, and it just comes alive. So light and how it affects our images is everything. And the challenge as photographers is to learn how to control our cameras so we capture the beautiful light we see.